Good evening. Such an important part of the Yamim Noraim, the high holidays, are the melodies and the music in terms of the experience and the way we feel. And so I wanted to, as we begin our learning in Elul, have the pleasure of inviting Carl onto a Zoom meeting so that we can share some of the melodies of the Yamim Noraim. And there's different kinds of melody and song that we use on the festivals. And Carl, maybe you are the expert here. Maybe you can say a little bit about, first about Nusach and your own relationship to Nusach.
Well, Nusach it's a little bit like scales in music. We have major and minor scales. Some people know that Jewish music seems to have a stereotype of using minor scales a lot. And in our prayers, we have all sorts of various types of scales that are used for different kinds of prayers, like on Shabbat evening. And Shabbat morning. And those patterns of little pieces of musical phrases are used over and over again in throughout the texts that we're trying to pray.
Great. And so then we have these special ones that we want to share for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And Carl, can you say a little bit about, because unlike Shabbat, which is every week, or obviously the weekday, you wait, 50 weeks to come back to these. And what is it like returning to them every year as someone who leads them?
Well, we often think of the Jewish cycle of holidays as a spiral as opposed to just a circle. Because ideally, when things come around again every year, you're not in the same place spiritually, physically, emotionally, psychically as the previous time. And we hope that we're actually making spiritual, psychic, maybe even physical progress in all of these areas. So when I come back to these high holiday tunes and texts every year, I plug into all of my past experience with these texts over many years from when I was a kid in day school in yeshiva, and felt very moved by the services and the intentionality and the intensity and the sense of community and the sense of sincere prayer. So starting with a foundation from my youth, and then every year that I've participated in services, either as a regular congregant or as a service leader, it reinforces the overall sense of this holy spiral, the awe and the majesty of this holiday season, and how it becomes deeper and deeper for me with repetition. And as Rabbi Lewis said, memory is very important, and music is a great way to create memories and to enliven and refer back to our memories. Because these tunes that I heard as a kid, tunes that you learned as a child, they can stick with you for a long time and become very powerful, sentimental, and spiritually moving.
Right. Well, let's get to the beginning, like Mariv, the evening service on Rosh Hashanah. This would be on page 5 of the Machzor. And it's always such a moment, the first time to hear that Rosh Hashanah melody. So, Carl, why don't you give us first the musical structure, and then onto the words.
Well, the Nusach for Mariv goes something like Yai da 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 yai da da yai da 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 yai da yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da da yai da da. So applying that to the end of the first bracha in Mariv, at the triangle towards the bottom of page 5. Uma'avir yom, umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila. Adonai tzevaot shemo, El Chai Bekayam. Tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai. Yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da da Ha'ma'ariv aravim.
Thank you. All right, so then now to move to a different musical structure on page 87. This is the section right after the Kedusha for Shacharit. So you may have Lou Goldish's voice in your head as Carl chants this, but this is this distinctive, a different distinctive musical structure. Carl, why don't you sing the Nusach first, and then a little bit of the words.
Okay. Well, this Nusach is a little bit less sing-songy than the first one, but it's still a kind of small scale type mode that applies to that can be applied to a whole paragraph worth of text. So it goes something like ya da da ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da da ya da 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 ya da da. So for instance on page 87 at the top, Ubechein Tein Pachtecha Adonai Eloheinu al kol ma'asecha v'yematecha al kol ma shebarata v'yira'ucha kol ha'ma'asim v'yishtachavu lefanecha kol haberuim v'ye'asu chulam aguda achat La'asot ritzonecha, levav shalem, and so on.
Thank you. And now jumping to Yom Kippur, the distinctive slichot, the confessional sections of Yom Kippur. This would be on page 233. It's a, the slichot service is all around the repetition of the 13 attributes of God's mercy. And so here's an example from that.
One of the climactic moments in all of the several occurrences of slichot throughout the liturgy is a sequence of 4 or 5 verses that start with Shema Kolenu. And typically we open the ark. And these are traditionally done as a call and response. So the prayer leader will recite it, and then the whole congregation will recite it afterwards. So here on page 233, after the first paragraph where the print is bold, Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu, v'kabel b'rachamim u'v'ratzon et tefillatenu. and now the congregation tries to chant that the same way, or as similar as you can with your own sincerity and your own musical interpretation.
Right. We do our best.
We do our best.
Do our best.
Yeah.
Um,
God hears your sincerity more than your actual notes.
for sure. So there's a great example of some of the Nusach, but then of course there are other ways in which music comes in. Of course, probably the most dramatic is Kol Nidre, which deserves its own separate video, and we'll have a chance to learn about Kol Nidre in one of the morning Elul sessions. But I wanted Carl, to make this distinction of Niggun and the sort of two different types of Niggun we're using in Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. For
So,
the there's three sections in Musaf, these very distinctive sessions of kingship, remembrance, and shofar, malchuyot, shofarot, and zichronot, and each one of those sessions has a distinctive melody, a distinctive nigun that we've put in, and there's a difference in that the malchuyot section, Carl brought us this very distinctive nigun, which seems to be specific to Aleinu, to the text of Aleinu. That's the first one and the most dramatic. Carl, do you want to have anything more to say, or would you share that nigun?
sure. Well, I don't know all of the full history of this nigun, but I I do take this nigun as very powerful as a wordless, mostly wordless nigun. I mean, with the way that I learned it and that I have done it in this congregation is it goes on. There's two or three parts that have no words whatsoever, and then finally there's a kind of climactic part that applies to the words of Aleinu, the actual text, and I could imagine some Hasidim sitting around the tish at the table, or maybe a campfire out in the woods if they're running from the pogroms, and uh, or maybe a cave where there's sound protection, singing this nigun with no words and just letting the melody evoke and express the strong emotion. Some other nigunim, like the ones we use in Zichronot and Shofrot, um, the tunes that we've brought for those actually originated as Hasidic tunes to other texts, so like songs that had lyrics, sort of more poetic standard lyrics, and we've applied those tunes to our Musaf text. The music historians call that contrafactum, when you take an existing tune and apply it to a different text. And we're very familiar with this. We do this a lot with Adon Olam and other parts of our familiar liturgy. We'll take me out to the ball game and apply that to Adon Olam. That's called contrafactum.
Right, in the way that we use Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah for Psalm 150, and we've been doing Country Roads, Country Roads Adon Olam on Shabbat morning.
Right.
So let's remember here the Aleinu Nigun.
Yadadai, 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 Yum bum bum, ya da 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 da, yum bum bum, ya da 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 da, yum bum bum, ya da 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 da, yum ba da, Aleinu, L'shabeach L'adon Hakol, and so on.
It's beautiful. And just a note, although one of the things that's so unfortunate about not being able to be together, and one of the limitations of Zoom, is that we can't sing together. You can't hear two voices at the same time. But if you mute, you can just sing as loud as you want and still have the feeling of singing along. So I just had the experience, Carl, of singing along with you, even though you didn't have that experience.
I could hear you in my soul.
Okay, so I want to conclude with in this category of, thinking about all the songs, one that's particularly special for me because it's one that Carl and I sort of talked about and brought together. It's a Chabad tune for a piece of liturgy called Rachamana. It's on page 240. We're just going to sing the melody of it, and it's a very wonderful kind of driving nigun, and also I use it for Purim because of the strange, paradoxical, and wonderful connections between Yom Kippur and Purim, which we might have occasion to talk about later. So, Carl, if you could just lead with the nigun for Rachamana. Thank you very much, Carl. And to anyone who wants to sing these nigunim together, to practice them, come to shofar blowing on Elul morning, and afterwards we can stay on and sing a little together. So thank you so much, Carl.
Thank you, my Lewis.
And thanks to everyone who watched the video. Good night.